All right. So yesterday we talked about Portugal and the start of the age of exploration. So what European country started the age of exploration? Oh, just kidding. Okay. What innovations allowed for the age of exploration to occur? And what were the European countries in search for during the age of exploration or the age of discovery? I don't know, term for it. What is going on? There it is. That's better. Parker, is that going to be your screensaver for the rest of the year?
It's
Jeez. A mole rat. All right, okay. So what country does it start with? What country started the age of exploration? Yesterday I showed you a cool monument that they have created to show homage to the age of exploration, the first global age. The country. Why? Go ahead. Portugal. Yep, good job. And we talked a little bit about
Say Messi.
yesterday we talked about why Portugal. And the reason for it is they're focused here on the Atlantic Ocean. They're really as far west in Europe as possible. And like I mentioned, when it comes to trade, when it came to trade during this Renaissance period, and even started the Reformation, who controlled and dominated trade in the Mediterranean? Paul, the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, good job. So they're focused right around here, guys. So modern day Turkey, moving up into Greece, moving up into South and East Europe. Okay, good. Who else? Paul, go ahead. Italy, yeah, good job. So Italy wasn't unified just yet, but in many cases with their kingdoms, they still controlled a lot of the trade, the influence coming from Asia. And they're still using this land trail, this land connection to Asia when it comes to the market and when it comes to a lot of resources and materials coming into Europe. It all flowed through the Ottoman Empire and Italy. So when it came to trade for the Western European countries, they needed to find a new way, new route. Portugal, what better country? As they're far west as possible. They're right next to the Atlantic Ocean. All right, so who we talk about first? Who's that first navigator? He created a school to help with exploration and utilizing these new innovations for exploration. What was his name? Why go ahead? Henry the Navigator. Yep, good job. So yesterday we talked about Henry the Navigator and his success with establishing a new trade route, really focusing here on the western side of Africa. He finds the Canary Islands. He establishes trade routes up here along the western coast of Africa. Okay, so at the start, that's where it began. Right? Again, it's like baby steps in a way. Okay, you just can't just jump right out in the Atlantic Ocean and sail west as far as you can. Columbus does it, which we'll talk about here soon. But, crazy. But anyway, with that, they're gonna focus along the shoreline. They're gonna focus along the border of Africa. And in case, let's say, there is a strong storm coming, they can just really quick dock up alongside of that. And we talked about some of the key innovations of the time when it came to exploration. And what innovations did we mention? What did we talk about? Paul, go ahead.
One of them was the African road,
Yeah,
like, no, I've been to limestone.
yeah, good job. So when you're out in the open water, it's not like they have road signs or ways of travel, right? They need to find a way to understand their location out in the open water. It comes to latitude, longitude lines. And they're gonna use the astrolabe, which is a way to indicate the sun and even some of the stars and moon even to understand where their location is out in the open water. So they're gonna use the constellations as a way of navigation. So that's a new innovation from the Renaissance period that's being applied to that. All right, what else? Why, go ahead.
Caravels?
Caravel, yep, good job. So these are a type of ship that is suited for this long navigation, these long voyages, okay? For the most part, these ships were just focused here in the English Channel, here in the Mediterranean Sea. Now you need to open up for a large ocean like the Atlantic and even the Pacific eventually, we'll talk about. So they need to have ships that are capable of handling these types of long voyages and travel. All right, then we also talked about two other explorers from Portugal. So we talked about Henry the Navigator focusing here along the western coast of Africa. Who else? Who else? Why, go ahead.
Bartholomew.
Yep, Diaz, yep, good job. So he sailed alongside the western coast all the way down to the Cape of Africa, the southernmost part of Africa. Okay, he even entered up into the eastern side of Africa, but not too far. Okay, but again, he's establishing a longer trade route along Africa in search for Asia, search for the East Indies. And the goal is to connect to Indonesia, where all these spices are located. Right, and then finally, another explorer, what was his name, that connected it to India, that established his trade route all the way to India. Connor? Yep, Vasco da Gama, good job. So he travels along the western coast, along the eastern coast, and reaches India. So he's the first one, first explorer to finally reach Asia from this new route, okay? Again, the whole idea was to try to break away from Italy and the Ottoman Empire's control of trade in the Mediterranean. You have to find a new route. Portugal does that with Vasco da Gama, Henry the Navigator, right, Bartholomew Diaz. Okay, is there any questions on that? So what prompted this age of exploration? Yesterday I told you 3 words to remember. 3 words, 3 G's. Well, go ahead. Yeah, okay, God, gold, and glory. Yeah. Anyway, God, gold, and glory. So when we talk about some of the expansion when it comes to Christianity, the Reformation was still large, right, during this time. It was happening right around the same time. And a lot of these factions were breaking away from the Catholic Church, which we talked quite a bit about already. So if you're the Pope, if you're the Catholic Church, you want to try to really increase your numbers for your church. And what better way than to explore new lands, to try to push more people to Christianity, to Catholicism. Okay. And when it comes to this expansion, that was one of the reasons. Right? They want to try to convert as many people to Christianity as possible, make them followers of the Pope of the Catholic Church. All right, good. And then we talked about gold, right? So enhancing some of these markets, trying to get as many resources, materials as possible to connect to the marketplace. You have more of these resources that you can't find here in Europe, but are prevalent here in Indonesia, these cities, then you're going to be rich, you're going to be wealthy, and that's going to bring a sense of power. Okay, that's going to rise you as more of a dominant power within Europe and the world. All right, is there any questions on that? Okay, so Portugal, good. Today we're going to focus more on Spain. So here are your terms for today. And this is really it. These are the last of the terms. Like I said, I don't want to pile it up with too many names to remember, but in any case, I have to go through a few of them, obviously. I think we finished off with the Treaty of Tordesillas, right?
today we're gonna talk about that in the lesson, so I'm not gonna focus that with the vocab. Circumnavigate, conquistadors. I think I had Columbian Exchange up there yesterday, didn't I? Okay, well, you already have that one then, you're good. Triangular trade. There you go. So I'll give you a little bit of time to work on each terms here. Today we're gonna talk about Spain. If we have a little bit of time at the end of class, you know what to do. Work on your projects. Presentations are fun. So, what do you want? Bless you. You done, Chris? Good. You guys need a little bit more time? Okay, one more minute. Why do you have a picture of Homelander on the presentation?
Because that's what the presentation is about.
Oh, is it?
That's a presentation, oh, the 232 slides on it.
You should know who Homelander is. What? It's too mature for you. Because you're not mature enough for that.
Oh, that's not the worst thing on that slide.
It's getting heat for it. I'm the one that put it in.
All right, okay. So we're gonna talk about Spain today, okay? And one of the biggest reasons why Spain is looking to explore is because Portugal's doing it, right? They're accessing a lot of these resources and materials, and they're cutting out the middleman, like I mentioned already, with Italy and the Ottoman Empire. So here they are opening up trade and opening up the market to a lot of these spices and a lot of these goods that you can only find here in East Indies and in Asia. So Portugal is becoming wealthy, becoming a stronger nation. And Spain, right next door to Portugal, sees this wealth and sees a lot of the resources, materials in the marketplace that's providing that strength to their country. Spain decides to do the exact same thing, right? And with that, they're going to try to really fund a lot of these voyages to find a new route to the East Indies, right? So yeah, we talked about Vasco da Gama, and how he's establishing trade finally to India. But how about a different route? How about a new way? And Columbus is gonna be that first person to do so. You guys already know about Christopher Columbus. Columbus Day was not too long ago, actually. And the question comes up, was he a hero or was he a villain? Right? And when it comes down to it, when we're looking at how he abused and took over some of these lands and treated the indigenous tribes, yeah, it's easy to say he is a villain. Okay, but when you look at the United States, when you look at America and the finding of really the Western world, you have to give him some credit for that. But in any case, it's one of those things where a lot of people debate whether or not he should be viewed as this hero or this villain. In any case, we're going to keep moving on. We're going to talk about some of these other key explorers. With Christopher Columbus, you guys know a little bit about this already. So in 1492, he sailed the ocean blue. Oh, I love that rhyme. You guys ever hear that one before? Yeah, okay, good, good. Carolyn, what's up?
I have a fact about Christopher Columbus.
Okay, let's hear it.
So he basically invented the image of a mermaid, but basically it was actually not a mermaid. I think it was a sea lion, and he did certain activities of a sea lion.
Nuh-uh. Jeez, wow. That's wild to hear about. Okay, we're gonna move on past that one. All right, so anyway, when it comes to Columbus, he actually wasn't from Spain, he was from Italy. And he was an explorer looking to navigate, to find a new route to the East Indies, to find a new route to open up trade with Asia. So he convinced King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella of Spain to sponsor his voyage. You guys know the boats, the caravels, what are the names of them? Oh, no. You think you know?
I know one of them guaranteed.
Okay.
It's because we talked about it.
Really? We know them? Some of them? Okay. Amelia, go ahead. Yeah, good job. Anita, Santa Maria. Good, good. So, the three ships, the three caravels that were utilized.
Ship named after a baby.
Huh?
So that'd be the ship named after a baby.
You're wild. You're wild. But anyway, he took three caravels, 90 men, and they reached the Indies, right? He thought that this was the East Indies. He thought he reached Indonesia, but he wasn't even close, right? He reaches Hispaniola, which we know is really the Dominican Republic, around those islands here in the Caribbean islands. So he reaches these islands here, and he thought, like I mentioned, he was in Indonesia. Thought he was in the East Indies. So he called the people that he encountered with Indians, right? He's totally off. But anyway, he finds the new world in other ways, in other names. So this is really describing what I just talked about. And with that, he decides to head back to Spain and tell about his findings and inform about his findings. Okay. And he'll make several more trips after so to try to help set up a little bit more of this colonization and trying to extract resources in this pursuit for gold. The sails, they had crosses on them. And the reason for it is because this conversion to Christianity, to try to prompt for this Catholicism to be spread wherever he will go. So one interesting thing I thought was that I read a little bit more about when I was in college was a lot of these conquistadors, a lot of these explorers, when they're jumping off the ships, okay, these indigenous tribes were talked about in their forms of glory and religion, that these gods would come across the open water and that they would present themselves and they would seek their form of salvation. And as these conquistadors, these explorers jumped off the ship, a lot of them had armor on. A lot of them had and were prepared with armor, or let's say warfare, or let's say any type of battle. And these indigenous tribes saw this shining, glistening armor, and they thought they were literally angels in a way, right? They were a form of angels, and they were sparkling from the sun. And this was just something of a symbolic meaning for a lot of these indigenous tribes, that they thought they were larger than life. They thought they were this mystical, this heavenly being. So I thought that was interesting. A lot of these indigenous tribes, they treated these people like gods, and they gave them resources and materials, and really welcomed them in at first. Obviously, we know when it comes to Columbus, he mistreated a lot of the indigenous tribes to extract resources in their own homeland, to force them as slaves, killed many of them off. And a lot of the diseases that were brought forth from Europe wiped out a lot of the populations here in the Caribbean islands and moving up into North America. Their immune systems just weren't prepared for these types of interactions just yet. So overall, when it came to their exploration, there was a lot of confusion, a lot of death. And like I mentioned, I thought that was an interesting story when it came to some of the armor glistening in the sun. And they thought these people were literally beings from their heavenly ideology, their thought. All right, so we already talked about the Treaty of Tordesillas already. But as Spain is searching for new lands and is setting up these routes here in the New World, okay, finding the New World, okay, Portugal and Spain, they're in conflict with one another. They need to have some sort of established meaning behind their trade, behind their colonization. And with the Treaty of Tordesillas, it's focused really right along this 45th parallel. Okay, right along here, guys, 45th parallel that separates the Old World and the New World. So I talked a little bit about this yesterday. In the Old World, Portugal will establish these trade routes. Yeah, as you can see here in Brazil, they'll colonize a little bit of this portion of eastern Brazil. And anything west of this 45th parallel, okay, that's going to be focused with Spain. And that's considered the New World. So the Pope actually establishes this line of demarcation. So if you guys want to put that in parentheses right beside the Treaty of Tordesillas, please do that. The line of demarcation. I was going to put it as a vocab term, but it's literally the same thing. And again, line of demarcation, D-E-M-A-R-C-A. Yep, there you go. All right, so anyway, like I mentioned, anything east is the Old World, where Portugal established their trade routes, established their colonies. Anything west is focused with Spain. When you're looking at it, you're thinking, wow, Portugal is really making out here, right? But anything past this, which we'll talk about with some of these other explorers like Ferdinand Magellan, okay, and even moving out into the Pacific Ocean, they have access to this side of the world as well. The goal is, though, is to get to the Pacific Ocean. That's going to be the search for many of these explorers to find this Northwest Passage, as many are realizing that this isn't the East Indies, right? Columbus was wrong here. He thought he found the East Indies. But in any case, right, this is only going to set up an establishment for the Northwest Passage, finding a cut through to get to Asia. And with that pursuit, they're going to set up colonies, which some of you guys know quite a bit about already. But the main thing to know with the Treaty of Tordesillas, this is a treaty between Spain and Portugal set up by the Pope. Anything east of the line is the Old World, controlled by Portugal. Anything west is controlled by Spain. And another name for it is the line of demarcation. All right, so circumnavigation. So Ferdinand Magellan, he wasn't the one that actually did it, but his crew completed the first circumnavigation around the globe. So they traveled far distances, okay, across the Atlantic Ocean, down around South America, into the Pacific Ocean. They actually landed at the Philippines, where Ferdinand Magellan would die. He would get killed. And the rest of his crew would continue this voyage back to Spain. So I thought it was interesting. They took many ships, 250 men in this travel, this goal to travel around the world. And here's their route. I think I have a picture of that slide that shows that. Coming from Spain, they're coming down around South America. They actually come right through here, guys. Their goal is to try to find this Northwest Passage, but it wasn't present anywhere near, right? So they continue on down here to the bottom of South America. They were very close to just rounding the bottom, but they actually find a strait, which is named Strait of Magellan. Makes sense, right? That's where Magellan traveled through. And as he travels through the Strait of Magellan, they focus up the Pacific Ocean. Okay, like I mentioned, they end up docking, they end up stopping here in the Philippines, and that's where Magellan will be killed by some of these indigenous tribes. Okay, so Magellan, he actually dies. He doesn't make it all the way around the world, but his crew does. And on this long travel, many people died. Right? It wasn't attacks from these indigenous tribes. It was just the travel itself. It took over 3 years to complete. So it took quite a bit of time, right? But in any case, their accomplishments is seen. And with Ferdinand Magellan's crew, only 18 of them made it back home. And like I said, they stopped here in the Philippines and they continue the voyage around Africa back to sea. All right, so Ferdinand Magellan. I think I have a picture next slide to show that route. I just pointed out on the map though. Yep, there you go. So here's the route. Like I mentioned, traveling from Spain down along South America. Okay, they break through right here, very close to the bottom of South America, what is known as the Strait of Magellan. Okay, and they continue their path to the Pacific, landing at the Philippines where Magellan died. He gets killed by indigenous tribes. Through the East Indies, like I said, that was the destination in the first place. They grabbed a lot of resources, spices, and makes their way back. Of the 250 men that started the trip, only 18 of them made it back. And like I mentioned, Magellan, he wasn't even along for that ride to finish it. All right, so Spanish conquerors. So I'm sure you guys heard about these conquistadors already. So just shortly after Christopher Columbus sets sail and finds this new route to the Western world, finds the new land, right? Conquistadors in Spain, obviously, pushed for this colonization of the new land, try to extract as much resources as possible in the search of gold, right? Some, which we'll mention here soon, trying to find this fountain of youth, which a lot of people think that's just made up story. But in any case, there's a lot of backing behind it. But the whole goal of these conquistadors was to try to enhance the wealth of Spain, and try to make it an even stronger kingdom, and make it a little bit more of a dominant power when it comes to these European countries. So like I said, England, France, Portugal, okay, a lot of these countries are expanding out, and the whole goal is to become most dominant, most powerful. The only way to do that is to conquer these lands. And for the conquistadors, it's a search of gold. Or even a northwest passage to the East Indies, where they're going to have access to a lot of the markets, the spices, and goods, materials that you can't find in Europe, only focused in Indonesia. So again, search of gold, search of the Northwest Passage. Like I mentioned, with one of these explorers, whoever gets the chance to maybe look up this explorer, this fountain of youth, which is kind of like a myth, but in any case, I think it's interesting to talk about. All right, so Hernan Cortez, he conquers the Aztecs in Mexico. Okay, and this is where modern day Mexico City is located. This is the city that's literally surrounded by water. And at the time, this was viewed upon as this city that is just sparked with gold, with riches, and wealth. And that was the whole goal for Hernan Cortez, is to find this city of wealth, this city of gold. And he thought the Aztec Empire here, where modern day Mexico City is located, that's where it was. That's where it was at. And Hernan Cortez utilizes a lot of the indigenous tribes that were rival with the Aztecs to take them over. Okay. So again, at first, as they're coming over the water, they're treated literally as these heavenly beings, as they have this armor, as they have their blades glistening in the sun. It looked like they're angels in many cases. So a lot of these indigenous tribes accepted them into their tribe. They thought, again, that they're these guys that were going to bring their salvation to them, okay, in their own views of religion, obviously. And a lot of them welcomed. But with the Aztecs, okay, they kicked back against these conquistadors, especially Hernan Cortez. But he uses a lot of the tribes that were rival with the Aztecs to actually take them over. Okay, they didn't have enough men, obviously, to take them on by themselves. So they had to use a lot of the tribes that were surrounding the Aztecs to take them out. And that's exactly what happened. Obviously, disease, sickness spread, right? And that's what killed a lot of these Aztecs as well. But for the most part, when it came to Cortez, he used a lot of these other indigenous tribes to help with this warfare to take out the Aztecs and control what we know as much of Mexico. And this will continue on up north into modern day California, okay, Colorado, New Mexico, even parts of Texas, okay, for the Spanish crown. Francisco Pizarro, he conquered the Incas in South America. So this was an interesting story here as he's moving down into modern day Peru. So as he's taking over these lands here in South America, he actually captures the king, right? And he uses them somewhat as ransom to take over the lands. And with that, he conquers the lands. He conquers, obviously, the empire of the tribe in Peru. And with that, he actually just kills the king. So it just kind of goes to show what these conquistadors, what they're all about, in the search of riches, in the search of wealth. They didn't really care about prisoners. They didn't really care about these indigenous tribes. And they killed many of them off as they were taking over these lands, forcing them as slaves in their own land. All right, so here's just a picture of the Aztecs, Hernan Cortez, as they're taking over much of the land here in modern day Mexico. So like I mentioned with Cortez, he takes over this Mexico City, okay, and he takes over the Aztec Empire really within a short period of time. Pizarro, like I said, modern day Peru, stretching down the eastern side of South America and dominating these lands. Like I mentioned, historian, he captures the king of this tribe and he really takes him out, the Inca Empire. In many of these places, you'll find a lot of these pyramid-like structures. And within the Aztec, the Incan Empire, a lot of their architecture is very unique for South America and Central America. And it actually shows an appearance much like the pyramids in Egypt, which a lot of people are looking at, constantly questioning. If you stay up real late at night, you'll find that these ancient empires and how they're focused with aliens. It's crazy stuff. But in any case, a lot of people are fascinated by the way these pyramids, these monuments look. Chris, what's up?
If it applies to what we're learning about right now, would it be possible to talk to the fire pyramid?
What's that?
Since
Fires
it-
in the pyramid.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Why not? Let's do
That's what
it. All right. Yeah, I mean,
All in favor?
Johnny Depp was-
Road to El Dorado.
Johnny Depp's
All
like in,
opposed? Why not Road to El Dorado?
Johnny Depp was in current events not too long ago too, so why not, right? All right, anyway, so further north, like I said before with the Spanish, they're in search for this Northwest Passage, for this wealth, for this gold, these riches. And as Hernan Cortez is pretty much dominating all of Mexico, and with Pizarro taking over a lot of the eastern coast of South America, they're dominating these indigenous tribes, trying to extract as much wealth as possible, and doing so in many brutal ways. And when you focus a lot of the attention to obviously Spanish is the language spoken. Obviously, there's different dialects of it when you're looking at Central and South America. But that's why Spanish is so prevalent in these areas, because of the conquistadors, because of the colonization of these places. All right, so the English, I'm not going to be able to focus on them too much, but even France, they expand their exploration as well, and moving more into what we know as modern day Canada and the northern parts of the United States. So with France especially, they're focusing a lot of their attention on traveling internally here in modern day United States through the Mississippi River. So setting up trade, and the fur trade will become very prevalent with the French. Okay. And eventually there's going to be a fight, a war over the Americas really right before the Revolutionary War for France and England. Anybody know what that war is? What? Okay, yeah, you're on the right track there. Paul? French and Indian War. Name for it. Yep. Good. So 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War. Good. So yeah, with that war, obviously these countries, it's gonna spark conflict. They're gonna be fighting for a lot of the possessions, a lot of the resources that's prevalent here in North America. But with Canada, right, they're a multinational state, meaning that they speak 2 languages in Canada. They have culture of France and of England. And I think it's interesting to note with Canada today, there is parts within its country that still speak French, even though English is the more dominant language. I think it's interesting to know. All right, but anyway, this is search for the Northwest Passage. One explorer I want to talk about for England is Henry Hudson. So he is famous for traveling here along where modern day New York is. So there's the Hudson River, in the search for the Northwest Passage, and moving in here into the Hudson Bay. Okay. So he traveled really far distances internally here in the United States, reaching the Great Lake region. Henry Hudson, he's famous for that exploration for England in North America. All right, so here are just other famous explorers that might spark some interest. I just kind of talked about some of these already. So with John Cabot, Italian explorer, sponsored by England, and he claimed a lot of coastal lands, what we know as the 13 colonies. So reaching back to England and establishing this sense of colonization and stating that there's more land out there for the crown. Giovanni de Verrazzo, okay, Italian explorer sponsored by France, explored New York Harbor and didn't reach Asia. Again, finding that Northwest Passage, finding that connection from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. And then Cartier, French explorer, okay, explored a lot of Canada, again, focusing along the northern part of the United States, moving into what we know, the Hudson Bay, the Hudson River, and, really deep into the Great Lake region, even connecting down to the Mississippi River, focusing internally in the United States for this trade, this fur trade, that's going to be very prevalent. That's going to spark the 7 Years' War. All right, so those are a few explorers. Again, I didn't have them in the vocab. If you guys are interested to maybe look these explorers up with your project, go right ahead. I just want to include them in there. All right, so map making and the New World. So one name I want you guys to know is Amerigo Vespucci. So Vespucci was famous for mapping of what we know of the New World. Like I said, it all starts with Columbus. He thought he found the East Indies. He was totally off. But now there needs to be a presence in understanding how this new world looks and what this new world looks like. And with Amerigo Vespucci, he's going to be detailing a lot of the map of North America and South America. As these conquistadors and these explorers are traveling these far distances and claiming a lot of these lands for the crown, it's important to know where you're located, where you're at, what country controls what lands in this new world. And with Amerigo Vespucci, he's famous for mapping North America and South America. And it's actually named after Amerigo, America. Just over the years, the pronunciation just got off a little bit. That's what happened. But there you go. Americus is named after Amerigo Vespucci. Pretty cool, right? Yeah. Yeah. Not bad. All right, we only got a minute left. But there's a map, right? Here's a map of this age of exploration. Like I said, here with Columbus, starting off Spain's travel to the New World. Okay, we already talked a little bit about Portugal already. Okay, and how this expansion is occurring. And again, with the Treaty of Tordesillas, this is setting out the New World exploration and the Old. All right, is there any questions on that? So we'll finish this up tomorrow with the Age of Exploration. Like I mentioned, I didn't get to dive into many of these other explorers, but tomorrow, I promise I'll give you time to work on your presentations. Friday, you'll have the whole day along with the study guide to work on. All right, current events tomorrow. Can't wait. Can't wait.